Good evening, Charlotte here from Enriching Environments for Top Tip Tuesday on Instagram Live, and we are here live in Dubai on Tuesday the 10th of May. Hi Vanessa, hi David. Tuesday 10th of May, and hi Tanya, for Top Tip Tuesday and this is part 5 of our 6-part series about the Montessori sensitive periods, and this week we are focusing on refinement of the senses. And sorry I wasn't with you all last week. I had a break for the Eid holiday, and I hope you all, everyone in Dubai, had a great Eid break as well. Excuse me. And I've got a bit of a bothersome cough this evening, so please excuse me. So refinement of the senses is what we're talking about this evening. And this is one of the sensitive periods that goes from 0 to 5 years old. And what that really means is refinement of the senses. This is part of the 6 sensitive periods that Dr. Montessori observed in all young children. And a sensitive period is essentially a window of opportunity where children unconsciously learn whatever it is. And the sensitive periods are movement, refinement of the senses, language, order, social aspects, and small objects. So those are the 6 sensitive periods, and these are windows of opportunity where the child it's not that they're even interested in these particular things, they have an actual need. It's a human tendency. It is an inner drive where they, for example, need to move, or they spontaneously learn. Of course, they learn to roll over, and they learn to crawl, and then they learn to walk and run and jump and hop and skip and all of those things. That's the sensitive period for movement. And for refinement of the senses is they have this innate drive, this need to explore sensorially, so to use all of their senses. So you've probably heard in Montessori circles, well, in all early childhood circles, is that children learn with all of their senses during the first 6 years of life. And so we want to give them first real hand experiences before anything else. Real first-hand experiences in nature are really what nourishes the young child. So refinement of the senses. So there's touch, and there's taste, and there's obviously what they can see, what they can hear, and they're also really interested in different weights of things. So really, you'll notice that really, really heavy things and really, really light things are really of interest to young children. So refinement of the senses, that means they are absolutely fascinated by texture, for example. Have you ever crunched leaves with a young child? And some children are more sensorial than others in terms of they love textures like mud and sand and that sort of messy play. But in general, there's such a sensitivity to what they could touch, different textures. And what I'm going to talk about this evening is really how we can really nurture and support the sensitive period for refinement of the senses in a really, really, really simple and easy way at home. Of course, if in a Montessori classroom, in the 3 to 6 classroom, there's a whole area devoted to sensorial, to really honing the senses and making the most of this interest, this need for sensorial experiences. So in the 3 to 6 classroom, you have things like the cylinder blocks and the different coloured cylinders, and you have the pink tower and the broad stair. And what's really important in a Montessori classroom is that each sense is isolated in this area of the classroom. So the pink tower, for example, is going from smallest to largest, largest from smallest, the smallest cube to the largest cube to the smallest cube. You have the touch tablets, where you are looking at different textures, so they learn the language of rough and smooth, and that's just one sense. So as an educator, you would present the touch tablets literally just on touch. There's no other sense that's being used. It's literally just the touch. On the cylinder box, it's the diameter and then the height of the cylinder block. So it's all of these senses that are really, really honed, particularly in the 3 to 6 classroom, and then it's broken down into the different, you have the smelling bottles, you have the taste bottles, you have the Montessori bells, where there's obviously a different note on each of the bells, and then the children learn to discriminate each the notes. And most of that work is self-taught actually with the Montessori bells, but it's all an exploration. So this is how we really awaken all of the senses in the Montessori classroom. But what I wanted to offer to you today is how we can do this in the home. Excuse me. I've got some amazing honey and lemon to support my cough. My wonderful assistant in my class, Ariane, is from Cameroon, and she's given me this really beautiful dark Cameroonian honey from the forest area. So it's a really, really thick, dark brown, almost black honey, and it's so rich. It's almost like molasses. It's like black treacle. It's really incredible. So I'm going to be sipping on that all through the session, and I'm hoping that it's going to help. So how can we support our child with the refinement of the senses in the home? This is really, really easy because they are naturally drawn to exploring things. They are naturally drawn to smelling things, to being really, really identifying sounds, for example. Have you ever noticed with your young child, with a toddler? I'm in the toddler environment at the moment at Montessori here in Dubai. And a toddler, if they hear a plane or a helicopter, have you noticed that they notice the plane or the helicopter, the sound of the plane or the helicopter, before you've noticed it? Do you know what I mean? They are so open to these sensorial experiences. They just notice things. And what really that gives us as a gift, as educators, as parents, as caregivers, is we get to experience the joy and the wonder of the world through their eyes. And that really, really is a gift, because when we know that all of their senses are heightened, when we know that when they are learning with as many of their senses as possible, this is when they learn the most. This is when they absorb the most. And there's another really important piece to this, which is not the reason why we focus on refinement of the senses, but it's a really cool reason to really hone and refine the senses, is that I'm going to give an example of an orange, actually, and how we can really, I'll use this example of preparing an orange juice with the child, because it's very, very rich sensorially, and it'll give you a bit of background as to why it's so important that we offer these sensorial experiences in the early years, because that's where the child is. That's how they learn, with all of their experiences. However, another point to this is that when we offer this really rich sensorial experience, and then they literally have an imprint of their mind of this delicious, juicy, sweet orange, then later, when they come to the casa years or the elementary years, and they're talking about seeds or germination or different fruits or different places around the world where oranges are grown, for example, when they'll be able to literally draw on that experience, that rich sensorial experience they had in the early years, that rich sensorial experience of being in their kitchen or in their home and juicing that orange and really enjoying the fullness of that orange. And then when they are learning about it later on, in their education, whether it's CASA or it's elementary, they're going to be able to draw on that. So it's sort of like a complete picture. They've had the concrete experience, and then we give them the abstract facts later. So that's what's a really, really cool piece of offering these first-hand real sensorial experiences in the early years, is it's all part of the building blocks of the academic learning that comes later. And as I say, I want to clarify, we don't offer the sensorial because because later we're going to offer the academics. We offer the sensorial because that's where the child is now. The child's needs are there now. They need to learn with all of their senses. That's their absolute drive. That's what their need is. But the really cool piece is it does support academic learning later. So let's talk about the orange. So to give you an example of a really rich sensorial experience would be, so as I say, I'm in a toddler community at the moment, and the children bring their own snack to prepare. And mostly it's fruits and veggies, but there is some spreading as well, and the children can bring more or less what they like, but something that they can prepare themselves. And often, because they're really social now, my toddlers, because they're a little bit older in the community, they'll sort of ask what the other one's going to bring, and then they'll prepare their orange juice together or cut their apple together, the following day. It's really, really sweet. So when I would present to a child how to juice their orange, how to juice their mandarin, I'm thinking of offering a really sensorial rich experience. And what that looks like is firstly holding the orange, and it's really, I want to say acting, but it's not in a fake way. It's in a really, you just emphasize the qualities. What you want to draw their attention to is what you emphasize. So with the orange, firstly, I would look at it, turn it over in my hand. I would smell the skin. I would, really stroke the peel of the orange and observe the texture. Invite the child to do the same. And this I would do with as few words as possible, either completely silently or as few words as possible. Then I'd slice the orange in half. And then obviously once it opens, then all of that wonderful aroma comes up. So then again, in a way that's really, really slow, really, really intentional. And it's a lot of eye contact with the child. And usually what happens is that other children will gather round. And so I will ensure that I make eye contact, brief, but eye contact with each of the other children who have been drawn into the presentation. And then I'll, bring the orange to my nose, and I really, really inhale it and say, oh, it smells incredible. I'll smell that, and then offer it to any child who's nearby. I will offer them to smell the orange as well. And again, as few words as possible, but my movements and my enthusiasm to be as intentional as possible. So I'm really, really capturing the attention of the child, and I am honing in, really focusing on what I want them to experience. When I'm offering for them to smell the orange, I really want them to use their olfactory sense. I really want them to take that deep breath in and smell that orange, smell the sweetness, smell the how juicy that orange is. I mean, it's just so, there's nothing like just cutting open orange and smelling it, isn't it? It's just so amazing. And that's what I really, really want, is the children to really feel that, to experience that wonderful smell. And it's not rushing through it or doing it as quickly as possible. It's really, really slow and enjoying. And again, circling back to the joy and the wonder in the world, it's almost like thinking of simple pleasures. It's a really, really simple pleasure preparing an orange juice, isn't it? By hand like this. And then I'll go on to squeezing it and showing them again in very, very slow, intentional movements. And then when I pour the juice out into a cup and then taste it, again, really taking my time to savor that, to lick my lips, to make a comment about how sweet it is, or how refreshing it is, how delicious it is. Lots and lots of words, lots and lots of vocabulary. I mean, lots and lots of adjectives. But again, more than anything else, it's my body language is doing the speaking. Am I conveying joy in that experience? Am I being really right in that present moment with each of those children? When I did this a couple of times this morning, with children, and each time, sort of by the time I got to actually tasting the juice, there must have been 4 or 5 children around the table just observing. And what's really, really incredible about young children, as you know, all of you who have them, is that they need to repeat. Repetition is something they need to do. They need to repeat over and over and over again. So once the children have this imprint of experiencing juicing an orange, experiencing an orange in this way, they're going to want to do it over and over and over again. And that's what creates this beautiful imprint and this sensorial impression literally in their mind of this beautiful, just very simple, very, very simple experience, but really, really powerful and beautiful. So that's what I mean about drawing attention to the refinement of the senses. So it can be what we hear. It can be like the example of the orange. What we taste, what we smell. Just really, really simple things. And we have basil growing in the little courtyard outside our classroom. So just from garden time, I think it was yesterday, I sort of spontaneously said, let's gather some basil. We grabbed a basket, we gathered some basil from the plant, I think one child started rubbing it anyway and sniffing it. So I was like, oh, let's just bring it in. So we brought it in, we washed it, we dried it off in some paper towels, and then we all were, tearing the leaves, rubbing it, and then tasting it. And again, that is, that must have been 15 minutes work just to pick some basil leaves and taste it. But that leaves such a huge imprint in the child. And then anything we had left over, we then sprinkled on our lunch later. And it was just one of those really magical moments where you know that you are making such an imprint on a child's life. And food is a really, really important one, because food gives us access. It gives us, if a child has the confidence to taste lots and lots of different foods, it gives them access to different cultures. If you think about it, when we travel so much around the world, we're going to be trying so many different foods. If our child, food and culture are so linked, if our child has the confidence to try anything, anywhere, that is going to give them the ability to dive into any culture, anywhere in the world, as they get older and as they mature and teenagers and adults. So that's actually a really, really powerful gift to them. So if we can provide these sensorial experiences when they're young, where they have just such joy in, hi Jenny, thanks for joining. Sorry, hello everyone who's joining. I'm not keeping up. If we can give them these really rich sensorial experience from the beginning, this is so, so powerful for them. And as I say, you can do it at home really, really easily. Food, just take your time. Whatever you do food preparation wise, firstly touch it, smell it, and then taste it. Really, really explore, take time on each of those senses. And it's just slowing down and being intentional. There's no other magic. We don't need any kit or any gear or any specific materials. It's when you go, you go for a walk and it's picking up the leaves and crunching them in your fingers. It's just going over, when you're in the woods, or we have a beautiful park just opposite us here, just stroking the bark of the tree and just noticing the different textures. And what's so wonderful is this brings something alive in us as adults as well. This, because we're so busy and life in the Western world is really stressful, and we've got so much pressure, so many time constraints, to actually step into our child's world and notice something like the texture of the bark of a tree can be really quite a monumental moment for us as adults, when we realize the richness and the beauty of nature, the simplest things all around us, and how interested our child is. If we can cultivate this from a young age, that they are always interested in different textures, then it's adding to their curiosity. Children are, hi Rasha, children are naturally curious, they're natural explorers. So how can we hone this even more? And it's, and I gave the example of the helicopter earlier on. So for the auditory sense, it's when you hear a sound in the distance, don't name that sound straight away. It's like, oh, I can hear something. And again, it's this, I guess it's acting, but it's not being fake, you're acting, you're placing emphasis on something. Oh, I can hear something. And we don't need to say straight away, oh, it's a helicopter, or it's the grass being mown, or it's a chainsaw, someone's cutting a tree down, or something like that. Just see what it is. And I love doing this when the children come in the classroom in the morning. If I'm with them by the snack table, I'm packing their bags, and then we hear the door go and another child comes in. And I'm like, oh, who's just arrived? Let's listen until they speak. Let's hear them speak, and we can see who it is. Just something like that. If you have a lot of people who come in and out of your house, if they can hear the voice of the person who's just come in the house, if you are in the park and you hear a noise, what is that noise? Is it someone cutting a tree down? Is it a different bird? Is it a helicopter? Is it a plane? But don't name it. Just draw your attention to it. And that's the same with everything. Every flower, stop and smell together. Every texture, experience together. It's just such a privilege to be in the lives of children, to go at their pace, to slow down, to experience the joy and the wonder of the world through their eyes. And that's what refinement of the senses is. To me. I'm going to have some more of my amazing honey and lemon drink. And if you have any questions, please do tap them in now. And I can address anything, any questions you have. And I'll also have a look at my notes to check that I haven't forgotten anything. Don't know. Hi there, everyone who's joining. So, refinement of the senses. Just to recap. So, children learn with all 5 of their senses in the first 5 to 6 years of life. So we want to offer them first-hand experiences of real things, either in nature or if you can't go out in nature, but real things. So the simplest foods, basil that they've picked themselves, slicing an orange, feeling the orange peel, slicing an orange, smelling the orange, juicing it together, and then savouring that juice that you've squeezed together. Those really, really simple little pleasures in life. The textures of leaves, crunching leaves, the textures of sand, the textures of mud, the textures of different trees in the park, in the forest. The barks, different barks on the trees. Excuse me one moment. I think I can hear one of my children possibly crying. Is that Harry? I think I heard Harry. I'll continue. Maybe it was somebody outside because my door's open. But I'll see. So feeling everything, drawing their attention to what they can hear, drawing attention to what they can smell, drawing their attention to what they can taste, offering a huge range of sensorial experiences like different smoothies. Some smoothies really heavily blended, really, really smooth. Some smoothies with bits in it, different experiences of hot and cold, different experiences of textures of breads, for example, really crunchy bread and soft bread and toast, all of these different things that really invite our child into experiencing everything, because that's what they do. Because most of us is what we do as adults is that we respond to what we see, but a child doesn't work like that, and we want to make sure that our child is using all of their senses as much as possible, which is why screen time is... I'm really sorry. I think I'm going to have to go for a moment because that is definitely Harry crying. Give me 2 seconds. So, refinement of the senses. I think what I was saying just before I jumped out for a moment is that we are so visual as adults, and our children... Oh, yes, Jenny said a really, really great comment about different... using the tactile sense. So different... fabrics of different textures, so satin, silk, wool, nylon, plastic, hessian, cotton, etc. They enjoy stroking my clothes, especially my stockings. This is an opportunity for language enriching. Exactly that. And Jenny is actually a Montessori educator in South Africa. And I completely agree. And in the environment, we have fabric boxes. So lots of opportunities for different fabrics for them to touch and explore. And as Jenny said, it's such a rich language learning opportunity for different fabrics, for really rich natural fabrics that children are drawn to, and they really want to explore, textures such as velvet. They might not experience that much, really beautiful silks that are really, really smooth, and all the different textures of fabrics that you can have are really, really rich for a child. So coming back to, I think what we were talking about, yes, the visual sense. So when we're adults, we become more and more visual, and so we lose this tendency to explore everything with all of the senses like children do. So what we can do is ensure that we're in our child's world and we are inviting this full sensory exploration. So it's, as I say, encouraging the touch, encouraging identifying different smells, different textures, different tastes, what they can hear, in the distance, what they can hear far away, all of those different things. And it's just in a very, very relaxed, easy way. This isn't a test. It's really something for us that gives us a huge gift of being in the present moment, because we can't be thinking about all the work we've got to do and all the huge stresses and pressures that we have as an adult if we are just enjoying the richness of a moment of being barefoot on the grass, or being, touching, crunching up leaves or stroking bark of a tree. That really calls for us to be in the present moment with our child and with ourselves. And so that's really a gift that our children give us, and we can they invite us into this sensorial experience. So as I was coming back to, I'll come back to what I was saying is about screens, is that screens take our children away from learning with all of their senses. And that's why screens are they're not an appropriate way of learning anything, because any learning is going to just be rote learning. So there's lots and lots of educational apps and lots and lots of different ways that we're offered that children can learn online. And yeah, I have no doubt that you can get an outcome if you watch something enough, and there's rote learning and what have you. I'm not questioning whether the child learns or not. What I'm inviting is instead to offer our child a full, rich experience, because if a child is watching a screen, then the other elements of touch and of smell and of taste, for example, are switched off. They're not having a full sensorial experience. And what we want to be doing, particularly in the early years, is opening more into this, encouraging more of this, because we don't want them to lose it. Naturally, over the age of 6, it's not all first-hand experiences. They're not as concrete. It's more abstract learning naturally. That's what happens in the way the brain changes, the brain develops. So how can we keep them in that curiosity and wonder if we encourage all of this beautiful sensorial learning? Because it becomes a way of life for us, then it's something they're going to carry through later. A note on screens, actually, is that what I did for the children is I made these little sensory jars and sensory bags, so that when they're watching a screen, it was one of those produce bags, I think, that you get from the supermarket, and I put different beans and rices and textures and stuff, pulses in it, dried ones. And so what they can do is then have a sensorial experience. Another one is to have Play-Doh when they're watching a screen, if they need to for online learning, or you have family screen time, for example. And we've got the habit of doing it, but I always used to offer a different sensorial experience. So you're engaging one of the other senses. You're engaging the tactile sense. So the child is coming more into their body when they are watching a screen. So that's just a little tip to keep in mind. You can make a homemade sensory bag. You can buy them, of course, as well, or you can just give them a piece of Play-Doh to play with, to mold, to squeeze when they are watching a screen. And that can really help to ground them in that experience. So if anyone has any questions or anything you'd like to add about refinement of the senses, please do so now. So to round up, what I would love to offer is to invite you into allowing your child to experience the joy and the wonder of the world with all of their senses. And that is so taste, touch, smell, hearing, and feeling weights of things as well. That's really, really important. So it's a discovery of the world. Children are naturally curious and natural explorers. They learn with all 5 of their senses in the first 5 to 6 years of life. They need first-hand concrete experiences. They are naturally drawn to textures, to different tastes, to different sounds, to different smells. And so when food is just such an awesome way of doing this. Food and nature is how all of this is learned, how all of their senses are honed through nature. There's nothing can beat, lying on the beach or the grass or next to a river or in the mountains, for engaging all of the senses. There's the majesty of nature, offers us more richness than anything else that life can offer us. So thinking about inviting our child into that, and then we are invited into their world. And that's, for me, what is so special, because when we are thinking about refinement of the senses for our child, then it's our invitation to join them in their world and to savor every mouthful of food that we are eating, to smell, to touch, to taste, to notice the tiny sounds that you hear in the distance. And it's a game you can play in the park, just you're lying on the grass, like, oh, what can you hear close up and what can you hear far away? Just in a very, very casual way. As I said before, it's not a test, it's not an exam, just a really, these really wonderful ways that we can open and expand our child. Because actually what it does is it opens and expands us. What we come back to in our learning in all of this is that we realize that our child is, as Dr. Shafali says, is our greatest teacher. And being in our child's world offers us so much more than we could have ever possibly imagined. Thank you so much all for joining me this evening. Thank you for being patient in our little interlude. Harry's quiet again, so hopefully he's going to go back to sleep. Thank you so much for joining me. This was part 5 of our 6-part series on the Montessori sensitive periods. And all of the other parts 1 to 4 are available here on IGTV, on YouTube, Spotify and iTunes. My first book, The Montessori Mission, will be published within the next week, and I'm really excited to share all of that, share that with all of you. For private consultations with me, for workshops and online courses, meditations for children, please do go to enrichingenvironments.com/shop, and you have all the details that you need from me. You can DM me here with any questions for Top Tip Tuesday or any other queries that you have. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining me. Thank you, everyone. And or Jenny, actually, on Montessori Musings this evening, just at 10 o'clock Dubai time, there's a seminar on normalization that I'm going to attend. I don't know if you have heard about that. I'll send you the link actually after we finish. It looks really, really interesting. So run by Barbara Isaacs, and I think it's maybe Heidi von Staden is doing it as well. But anyway, if you're going to be going, I'll see you there, but I'll send you the link anyway. And I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. And I'll see you next week. Next week, the final part 6 of our 6-part series on the sensitive periods is the sensitivity to small objects. And that's particularly the toddler years. The sensitive period for small object is in the toddler years. As you know, they notice the smallest ant, they notice the smallest mosquito, and they pick it up and they usually want to put it in their mouth. So I'll talk about that next week, and looking forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye.